I think part of it is because I have always loved history. So in a non-physical way, I feel like I have visited other times and other places because I've delved so deeply into them. And so the idea of someone actually being able to travel out of their own time is a kind of a natural extension to that. But I also love the idea of if someone could travel through time, how would that change time? Or can it? Are things set in stone and you can't change it, or can it be changed? That whole question of how does it even operate? And I feel like every author, every screenwriter, everyone who tries to tackle the concept of time travel approaches it differently. And so there are endless possibilities of deciding how it could happen and what impact it has and what would it mean to be out of your own time. And I wanted to tackle time travel in a way that someone was traveling from one historical era to another historical era. So as readers, they still feel like they're in, old times. But to them, they've traveled in the future 80 years and so much has changed that they feel like they're living in a futuristic dystopia. And to us, we think it's the 1870s. This is so old-timey. How are you overwhelmed by this? But I love that idea of just demonstrating how much things changed over history, even though we look back and it all kind of blurs to us.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter, where we celebrate weddings, new book launches, and all those fun things all together. And Sarah's here with me on the show. And we're talking about her journey as an author. So many things to talk about. I'm on her website. And if you want to see a list of awards and recognition, and you want to use your mouse and scroll and scroll and scroll, then you're going to meet Sarah today on the show. Beautiful website, by the way, Sarah.
Thank you.
So glad to have you on the podcast. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Excellent. So we talked about weddings, book launches, and a lot of awards. Tell us, first of all, where you are in this big world of ours.
I live in the United States, right in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. I sit at the base of a mountain, in fact. So that's where I am right now. I grew up in the American Southwest, down in the desert. So I've made a drastic shift in climate and geology, but I now live, in the mountains, which I love.
Oh, that's got to be beautiful.
That's
got to be great. A wedding, which is exciting. Congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you. Yeah, our oldest child got married this month. So yeah.
Wow, goes by so fast.
It really does. It really does. They put together one of those wedding videos with pictures of the bride and groom, and I'm looking at pictures of him as a baby and thinking, that was yesterday. How in the world are we at a wedding? Yeah.
Again, we mentioned before we hit record, you and I, we don't grow old as parents. Right. Our kids grow old in front of us, but we're fine.
Yeah, it's an odd quirk of time. It passes for them, but not for us. I don't know how that works.
It's weird how that happens. But okay. Congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Now, and again, you just launched a new book recently. What's going on? This is great.
Yeah, I had another book release earlier this week. It's my 80th, so I hit kind of a great number.
Wait. For the people in the back, can you tell what number is this?
80. 80? Yeah, 80. Can you believe it?
Okay, everybody, we're done here. Thank you. Yes. Wow, 80 books.
Yeah, it's wild.
Come on.
Yeah.
That explains all the awards on your website. My gosh.
It explains the worry lines on my face and the lack of sleep. Yeah.
Did you start writing when you were 3 years old? Come on, 80 books.
No,
that's great.
My first was released 15 years ago, so I don't know what that averages out to, but it's a lot of books.
Oh, that's a lot of words.
Yeah. Oh, my word, yes. I probably better not add them up.
No.
It's not a number I want to see.
Okay, so before we get into all of the books, what is a typical, apart from weddings and book launches and all that, what is a typical working word week look like for you? How often are you writing?
For me now, because the stage of life I'm in allows for it, it's a full-time job. I'm at my desk by 8 in the morning. I work until 5 in the evening. I usually write, if I'm drafting that day, I usually write about 2 chapters, which for me is about 4,000 words. I do that Monday through Friday. If I'm editing, it's the same hours. I'm just focused on editing. So yeah, for me, it's full-time job, 40 hours a week. Yeah. Wow. When I was at different stages of life, I had little kids at home, was working other jobs. Obviously, I had to fit writing in where I could, but it's now full time. So that's what I do every day.
So you say it's like a job, but is it something that you continue to love doing? Is it becoming work? Like, where are you at on that scale?
I feel like that's shifted a lot over the years. I hit a point a few years ago where it really had just started to feel like work, and I was struggling to kind of find that joy and the creativity of it. And it's one of those jobs you have to love or it will be miserable because I don't know, it's just the nature of it. So I worked real hard to kind of make a mind shift for myself because it was a job, because I had deadlines and obligations. I knew that part of it wouldn't go away, but I needed to kind of find the joy in it again. So I started at that point each morning when I sat at my desk, I would write down one thing I was really excited about writing or doing that day. Whether it was a scene I'd been looking forward to or a character I enjoyed spending time with or a scene I was going to edit and really get fixed. I just took a moment to really intentionally think about what I loved about what I was doing that day. And just that tiny adjustment made such a big difference because it helped remind me that even though this is my job, I also still love it. And I'd lost sight of that. It just kind of got lost in the to-do list and in the daily grind of it. So that made a very, very big difference to just step back and really think about what I liked about it.
So if we went back 80 books ago and we had somebody on this podcast, you hit play on the episode, and there's an author here talking about the journey of writing. You haven't written 80 books yet. You haven't written one yet, but you hear an author talking. What kind of things would have been encouraging for you to hear now that you have 80 books behind you? What would have been helpful early on in your writing career, and that would have kind of sparked that for you to get going?
Yeah.
What would have been helpful?
I think when you're first starting out, it's important to recognize that you're starting out. You aren't an 80-book author. You aren't an author with 80 books of experience behind you. I've been told that for an author, your first million words are your internship. That's where you're learning how to write. So if I could go back and give myself permission to not write the perfect book, give myself permission to not be great at it yet, give myself permission to still be learning, I think I would have enjoyed it even more because I would have recognized that I was on a journey and I wasn't already at the destination. We tend to put so much pressure on ourselves to be amazingly good at something that we love before we've learned to be good at it. We'll read books by authors who've been at it for decades, and we can see how well they do. We can sense how great these books are, and we want our books to be that good early on, and they aren't. And I think that's where a lot of people get discouraged and just walk away from it because we fail to recognize that we're learning, that the skills we don't have yet, we just don't have yet, and we're going to gain them by working at it. So I wish I could go back and tell book one, Sarah, sit back and enjoy this. Enjoy learning what you're learning. Know that you're learning. Give yourself the grace to be learning. You aren't where you want to be yet, and that's okay because the journey has to start somewhere. I feel like even 80 books in, I come across things I wish I did better or I wish I knew how to do better. And having learned over the years that it's a process, that you're always learning, has helped me be more patient with myself, which I think patience is definitely a virtue in this industry because books take forever to write. They get forever to be picked up. It takes time to build yourself as an author. So patience is a very important thing to develop.
Okay, now this question might seem weird, but if you go to a carnival, they have one of those games. You have this big mallet, and it's called whack-a-mole.
Yes.
And the moles pop up, and you hit them. You're supposed to hit them, right? And you're supposed to. What pops up for you, even 80 books in, that you continue to have to kind of address? It's maybe motivation. It's how you write. Like there's these things that are recurring for you, even with as many books as you've written. You're still working through it. What are some of those things you are whacking?
In terms of my actual writing, I tend to struggle with pacing in the books that I write. My first drafts usually have significant pacing problems, so something I'm focusing on right now. 80 books in, you'd think we'd have all of it down. Yeah. You just don't. We all have weak spots as authors, and those will change over time. I still work on that, but knowing it's an issue, I continue to work on it in terms of like the business end of things. Having so many deadlines and so many overlapping projects, it can be hard to juggle it all. So that's something I'm also kind of learning how to do, how to better utilize my time. But I also get super excited about new projects and I'll take on new things when I don't actually have time to do them. So I feel like that's my biggest whack-a-mole issue right now is shiny new project. And I think, ooh, that'd be really fun. Ooh, I want to work on that. And I don't step back and realize I'm already pretty booked. I need to not take on everything that sounds interesting. So I think those are the things I'm dealing with all the time.
All right. Is there a common thread throughout 80 books at all? Do you see anything that links these two books together at all?
Yeah, I actually teach a class at writing conferences on the concept of what's called core story. And it's that exact idea that there are threads that weave through our stories as writers. Doesn't matter the genre, it doesn't matter the characters. There are themes that show up, and they're usually things that are particularly important to us, things we're dealing with in our own lives. Those can shift over time, but for the most part, they stay more or less the same. And I found when I sit down and talk to authors about that, and they really think about it, they find that thread, that thing that weaves through what they work on. And it's actually very empowering because it helps you define kind of who you are as a writer. It helps the more books you write, because you know that's there, it gives you that grounding, that foundation. For me, mine tend to be themes of hope, themes of human kindness, themes of connectedness among people. That shows up over and over and over in my books. And when I finally realized that, it really helped me define who I am as a writer. And it gets me excited when I'm working on a new project and I see that thread. And it's like discovering myself in the stories I'm writing. And it's very motivating. It's very exciting. I love when that shows up.
So why is that thread so important for you?
I think in part because it's part of the why of why I write. I want to tell stories about hope. I want to tell stories that help people recognize the connectedness between all of us, that help people to feel and experience that. And because it's woven through there, I find it in the stories that are there. After 80 books, it can be, there's this worry that every book you write is going to be identical. But at the same time, you don't want them so different that your readers don't pick it up and go, oh, yeah, this is a Sarah book, you know? And I think that thread is what that commonality is. It allows you to keep exploring new books and new stories and new characters while still having you in it in a way that is natural, in a way that is organic. And that's important as a writer, but also as a reader.
It's interesting. I would imagine your books in a store, and where other authors are excited to have one book on a shelf to sell, you have a whole section of a store for your books. As a new reader coming to your books for the first time, listening to our conversation, is there a starting point for somebody that you would say, if you're coming to my books for a first-time reader, I would tell you to kind of gravitate towards this as a starting point? Where do we go?
Yeah, I often tell readers it kind of depends on what type of book you want to read, because my series are all very different. I have them on my website grouped in series so that people can kind of get a feel for where that series starts. But I have ones that are just straightforward romances, which is great, you know, if that's what you're looking for. I have The Tides of Time that just came out, which is time travel. So if you're more into fantasy, that's there. I have what was called my Dread Penny Society series. It's very much mystery and suspense in the Victorian era, so that's very, very fun. If you're deep into history, I have Ashes on the Moor or my Longing for Home series, which are much more historical fiction. So I basically say go and look at the series, and whatever one jumps out at you, start there, because that's probably the kind of book you're looking for.
Talk about your book covers, because I feel like we could just do a whole podcast just on the covers of your books. They're gorgeous. Who's helping you? How is this happening? They're just beautiful. Talk about your covers a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of depends on who they've come through. The ones that I have published on my own, my indie published ones, those are done through contractors who do book covers. There are book cover creators out there that you can find. I found ones whose work I love, and we work very closely together on what those look like. The ones done through the publisher, early on, I had very, very little say in my covers, but over time, I think gained enough trust from my publishers that they were willing to pull me in and make a lot of decisions with me part of it, which I'm grateful for because I love the covers that have been coming out lately. Yeah. So those in the end are, the final decision is made by the publisher, but I've been allowed to give lots and lots of input, which has been great because I love the covers they've been putting out these last few years.
they're beautiful. I love the fonts. I love the colors. I love the imagery.
Yeah.
Everything. Just wow. Is there any tips for a new author on trying to stand up for the image you have in your mind for your book cover when others are telling you maybe to go in a different direction, but you really feel this is what you want to see?
Yeah, I feel like especially if you're going through a publisher, it's hard when you're brand new because you don't have a lot of clout. So I feel like there's, at least for me with all of my publishers, there's been a point where they asked for information that could be used to create a cover. Things like, what are some important scenes, some important imagery? What do your characters look like? A lot of publishers will ask for, what are some examples of existing covers that kind of fit the vibe you're going for? If your publisher asks you for that, provide it, and provide it in a tremendous amount of detail, because that will help to guide them. As a brand new author, that's usually the place where you have the most influence. If they do come back and ask you for feedback on a few cover mock-ups, give that, but give it from a non-emotional point of view. Explain why, this works better for you or this doesn't. Explain not just maybe what isn't hitting the sweet spot for you, also let them know what is, because they are usually looking for guidance. Most publishers, their cover creation team has a lot of experience and knows the market, so you can lean on that expertise, but definitely give them the feedback when they ask for it. And if they ask ahead for information, don't skimp on that, because that's your best opportunity for influencing where your cover's going to go.
All right, yeah, because I can see when we talk about a thread through the writing, that's one thing, but there's also a thread through the imagery around your books as well, which ties back to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you as an author have a brand. Every author does, and not enough authors step back and really define what that is. Your core story, your thread through your stories is absolutely part of that, but so is the feel of your covers, so is the feel of your website and your social media. So you need to be aware of what that brand is. The publisher will absolutely keep their brand in mind when creating a cover, but any influence you can give to make sure it fits yours as well is going to be absolutely worth doing, because your brand extends beyond that book, beyond that series. So you want to make sure you're staying true to that to the extent that you can. Okay,
so when we chatted earlier, you mentioned something about how your journey as an author started, and it was unique. So Could you share how you got started in all this?
Absolutely. As far as I know, I'm the only author whose journey started this way, at least the only one I've heard of. Most of the time when you talk to authors, they'll say either they always loved books and always dreamed of writing one, or they always wanted to be a writer and were always writing out books as they got older. But that was not me. Absolutely no inclination to become a writer. I was an adult with children, married, my own house, a mortgage, you name it, right? Like I was a grown-up. I should have had my life figured out. That's the theory. And had gone to my mother's house, because I didn't live terribly far from her at the time, to complain, because apparently children never outgrow that. If I had told her I had basically gone through my library's collection of the kind of books I was really kind of craving at that time. I wanted deep, rich historical details, along with a very interesting and intriguing romantic plot line, while being very well written and interesting. And I couldn't find any more books that hit that sweet spot, at least at my local library. And I was feeling a little bit frustrated. I 100% expected her to just tell me how terrible my life was, that everyone in the world should feel horribly sorry for me. I don't know why that's what I expected. Nothing's what I was hoping for. But instead, she said, well, if you can't find the books that you want to read, maybe you should try writing one. And I took that incredibly seriously. I've talked to her since. She has no recollection of this conversation. So it's just kind of a throwaway, please quit complaining to me, probably. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to try it. So I went back to the library, and instead of going to the fiction section, went to nonfiction, to the writing section, and checked out every book just in succession that I could find, and took so many notes about how to write books. Everything that I could possibly learn. That same library held a little writing conference a little while after that. I attended that, went to the classes, took all the notes, just desperately trying to figure out how to write a book. I went back and checked out some of my favorite books from the library and took notes on the structure of that book and how the writers wrote them, and checked out the books I didn't like as much and kind of tried to figure out what it was about them that didn't appeal to me specifically. I was really studying how to write a book. And then because I was obsessed with history, decided I would start with the historical because I already knew the history, so it was one less thing to have to go study, and wrote a book. And it was awful. So then I checked out all the books I could find on how to edit a book. And I learned everything I could about how to make a book better, and then did edit after edit after edit until I felt like it was pretty good. It was about 18 months after my mom had issued that challenge. We hit Mother's Day here in the United States. So I went to my local print shop and printed out the book that I had written and had it spiral bound, and I gave it to her for Mother's Day. The book I had written, she had no idea I had been working on it for a year and a half. And I knew before I even finished it that I was hooked. I'd found what I wanted to do, and I loved it. And now we're almost 20 years later and 80 books. And I don't know whether to thank her or curse her, but she started me on this path by accident. So yeah, an author who started on a dare, I don't know of anyone else who that is their journey.
That's a very unique starting point. Even with all the episodes I've had on the show, I haven't heard that story before. So
it's weird.
Wow. So mom is to blame for all of this. This is great. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah,
Thanks,
exactly.
Mom.
Sometimes the thanks is more sarcastic than at other times.
Yeah, right. Okay, well, where's your love of history come from then? If history is one of those threads as well, for you, where does that start?
Oh, from childhood, I found it fascinating. Aspects of life in different times and different places. But I think what keeps drawing me back to it is that while people's circumstances and situations change, and the different pressures and difficulties throughout history change, people don't. We're all very much the same. The things that we crave, the things that we long for, the things that we need remain the same. So for me, centering history, which we read about as events and dates, centering that on the people who would have experienced them and lived through them and been alive at the time, it brings it to life in a way that, again, it's the thread I talked about, that to me, it's human connection. I feel connected to people who have lived in the past because I learn more about what they experienced and what their lives would have been like. That to me is what draws me into history, is the people who experienced it, especially the people who we don't talk about, who were part of moments in time. And what those experiences would be.
Would you say your books are a great escape for people who dread technology and how connected and disconnected we are at the same time, and just everything that's going on in 2025? This is a great bypass and escape for them as a reader?
I hear that a lot, that it's nice to kind of step out of the troubles we have now and visit a different time, even though those people also have troubles. They're not ours. They're not the same ones. So it feels like an escape. While at the same time, we're watching them work through the difficult things that they're experiencing, which I think also gives us some hope that we can as well. So yeah, I think very much so, especially early on during the COVID pandemic. I heard from a lot of people who said it was nice to just step into these books where there wasn't that they were dealing with, and it kind of was a moment away from the difficulties of now.
So you're sitting in front of your computer, you have your phone next to you, you've got email, you've got all these things, and you have to take yourself out of this environment as an author and put yourself into an environment in the past. How do you transport yourself back in time while you're writing? How do you put yourself there?
I think one of the biggest things I finally started doing a few years ago was turning off my internet while I'm writing. Because then I can't get emails. I can't get distracted by online. It keeps me very focused where I am. I start out each writing session with music that is connected in some way to the character or the situation or the scene that kind of helps pull me into the moment. But yeah, I have to shut out all the distractions that I can. If while I'm writing I need to look something up, a historical detail or something, I just make a note of it to come back later rather than going back online, because it pulls you out of the moment. Mm-hmm. And at least for me, is too big of a distraction. So yeah, while I'm writing, I just have to shut everything else out.
I would think 300 cat videos would really cramp your writing time, right?
And it's amazing how quick you get into that rabbit hole.
Oh,
the algorithm sees me coming. It's like, here we go.
Like, oh, here comes Sarah.
Exactly.
Okay. So yeah, because I think that'd be difficult to step outside of what's easy like in the moment. Again, you could Google stuff, you can look things up,
Yeah.
right? But I love when a book takes us as a reader into a different time
Yeah.
and it feels authentic. It doesn't feel kind of forced,
Yeah.
right? And you have to, like medicine, for example, like the person's sick or they broke a bone. How do they treat that in that
Yeah.
time compared to now? Our common knowledge now could translate into the story, and people are like, this doesn't feel real. They
Exactly.
didn't have that technology back then, and why is this showing up here?
Right. And even if readers can't put their thumb on what it is that feels off, they can sense it. So, yeah, you have to be super careful about that. It's so easy for our modern viewpoints to trickle backwards into what we're writing. Or you don't think, oh, I bet they didn't treat a broken leg the same way in 1801. I better figure out how they did. It's easy to not even think about the things that have probably changed. But that makes all the difference in really transporting someone fully into a different time.
How do you keep 80 different stories straight in your mind when you go sit down to write a new project? Do you have all that history as reference, or do you try to start with a blank page?
Well, I take extensive notes on everything, everything that I write, everything that I work on. Each book I write has its own notebook that has all kinds of information in it. So I have references to go back to. If I'm writing in a series, I have a lot of notes about that series and where it's building and where it's going. I'm very much when we talk about writers, you have those who are plotters and those who are like discovery writers, you know, people who plan out everything ahead, and then those who discover the book as they write. I fall very much in the planner end of things. I plan out everything that I do, which has helped because I often have projects overlapping. I'll be writing a book that takes place in the Wild West of America and then have to shift to drafting a book in the 1700s in England. And even the language is different. It's so easy to get it all mixed up in my head. So having a lot of notes lets me step back and read quickly through my notes and get myself back into the right headspace. But yeah, it's lots and lots of, for me, lots and lots of notes.
How do you translate the vernacular of another country? Like, how do you put yourself into that space? Because again, there's words that we wouldn't know over here that's common to them or that time period. How do you put yourself there as well?
Yeah, I spend a lot of time reading primary sources from the era and the time. So reading journal entries, letters, newspaper articles to kind of get a feel for some of the vernacular. But then when you sit down to write, readability has to be your first goal. If you write something so deep in a vernacular that your readers are just lost, then they're not going to read your book. So for me, things like word choice and sentence structure are a seasoning in the dish, not the dish itself. So you put in just enough to keep it in their mind of where they are and what they're experiencing. But then the rest is a modern enough language that they don't feel totally lost. I've had people insist that my Jane Austen era books are written in the language of Jane Austen. And I said, they're actually not. If you go read Pride and Prejudice and then read my book set in the same era, they don't read the same because I'm not writing for the same audience she was. So you sprinkle in just enough word choice, just enough sentence structure, just enough formality that the reader themselves feels that it's, you know, the vernacular of the time, even though it isn't. So it's a balancing act. But when you get it right, it really makes all the difference.
Okay. Take us through your most recent release. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
What is kind of the general story outline for a reader listening to our conversation? What can they anticipate from your most recent release?
Yeah, I've had two that kind of came out back to back, and they are very, very different from each other. The first one is The Tides of Time. It is a time travel book. So we're connecting revolutionary France with Victorian England. So very different eras, very different time periods. They're only 80 years apart, but the whole world is different. We're through the Industrial Revolution. We're past all this. So it's time travel. And the woman who's made this journey is trying to figure out if she can get back to where she was before, if she even wants to. What would that even mean? And then the dangers of 80 years in the past start to catch up with her and has to navigate what that means. And then the one that just came out is very, very late Regency era, so time of Jane Austen, but right at the end of that era, a group of friends who gather together for a house party and have to navigate family dynamics and changing financial situations and find a way to support each other through a world that's kind of in upheaval.
I want to meet your brain. Because how all this is in there, my mind's spinning just listening to you explain all this. I don't even know how I would even keep any of this straight.
It's a
This is
little
amazing.
exhausting.
It is. My gosh. Do you have like a future goal that you're kind of working towards, where how many books you want to put in the world, or is it just project to project, move on, move on?
Yeah, it tends to be project to project. Books that are part of a series, I'll have a goal for that series. I anticipate this many books. This is the basic arc of the series. As I start to approach the end of a series or the end of a project, if it's more standalone, then I step back and say, well, what do I want to do next? So I don't really have an end goal. It's just kind of where am I at as I wrap up each project I'm working on, and what do I want to be working on. I usually have planned out 3 or 4 years in advance what I'm going to be doing. But that can be in flux. Sometimes it changes because life changes or the market changes or the publishing situation changes. So having to be a planner but be a very flexible planner has been a learning curve for me as a writer. But it's helped navigate an industry that changes all the time.
Is there a genre or a style of writing that interests you that you haven't attempted yet?
I would love to try writing fictionalized actual history. Like take an actual person from history and tell their story in a fictionalized form. So to tell something true, I guess is a way to put it, an actual character, an actual person from history to tell their story, but as a novel. I think that would be a fun thing to tackle. I haven't tried it yet, but it's always kind of lingering in the back of my mind.
Is there an idea for a book that you had and you got into it and you're like, this just isn't working right now for some reason, and you set it aside?
Absolutely. I think that's another thing I wish I had understood better as a newer writer. Not every idea is going to work. And sometimes it's because the idea itself doesn't work. Sometimes the timing's not right. Sometimes it's just a project you're not ready to tackle yet. I had an idea for a book many, many, many years ago, very early on as a writer. And I loved the concept. I loved the idea. But every time I tried to sit down and write it, it was overwhelming. I couldn't do it. I couldn't tackle it. I came back to it about 10 years after I first had the idea, and it just flowed. It was ready to go. I wasn't ready to write it when I first tried to tackle it. That book's not only out now, it is the first in a series of 8. So like it built from there. But I just wasn't ready to write it yet. And at the time I was so frustrated. I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. And the issue was that I hadn't learned enough yet. I was still growing as a writer. What you can write at 80 books is very different from what you can write at 1 and what you can write at 10. So we have to give ourselves permission to grow as writers and to not know everything yet. And if you have a great idea you're excited about and you're struggling with, you don't have to erase it or delete it. Just set it aside. Because when you come back to it down the road, it may be the right project at that time because you're the right person to write it.
So what is, for you as an author, what is easier now when you sit down for a new project that was hard for you at the beginning?
Part of it is knowing when a story idea is going to work and when it isn't.
Okay.
When I first started out, I'd have to write for a while before I was like, oh, this isn't going to work. There's not enough here, or I haven't worked out enough of the details. I can tell much earlier now. As an idea starts to form, I'm much better at knowing, oh, there's meat here. This one's going to be able to be a book. Or knowing that this is a great idea, but it needs to be a short story. Like, you just have a better feel for how story is going to play out. I also am a much better editor than I used to be. And I think that's one of the most important skills to gain as a writer, is the ability to rewrite or the ability to fix what you've written. Because once you're confident in your ability to fix something, you aren't as dependent on writing it perfect the first time. You can let go of that idea because you know you can fix it. And I think that helps speed up the process. It helps keeps you in the flow of the book. It helps stave off discouragement because you know you can fix it.
Talk more about the core story. Again, you mentioned that earlier. But as far as teaching other authors, why is that so important for you to get out there and help other authors through your teaching and stuff? And what are some more elements of that you would share with students that maybe we can kind of sneak into our episode today that could help somebody? Yeah.
Absolutely. One thing I do when I talk to authors about this is I have them sit down and really think about what is going on in their lives. What's something that they that weighs on their mind, something that they think about a lot. It can be everything from, raising children or feeling disconnected or social justice or things that sit on their hearts. One thing that's very important to me is advocating for people with disabilities. As a disabled person myself, it's something I've spent a lot of time working on. It's something that's very, very important to me. That's also something that weaves through my books. You find characters who are dealing with physical, mental, emotional struggles or illnesses, because that's something that's important to me. So I ask writers, name some of those things, list them out, write them down. And now think about the stories you're drawn toward as a reader. Do they contain elements of that? The ones that stay with you the most, which of those elements show up in them? Because chances are that's part of your core story as a writer. It's something that's so important to you that it weaves itself into not only your life, but the lives and the worlds that you're creating in your stories. By identifying them, again, we find what motivates us to write them, but we also find ourselves in the stories that we're writing. It's how we pull ourselves in. We've heard this phrase, write what you know. I think this is a lot of what that is referring to. If you're someone who's drawn to the idea of loyalty and family unity, chances are that's going to show up in your books a lot because it's what you know on a soul level, and that will show up there. Understanding what pulls you into story and what's important to you also helps as a writer when you're shifting gears. Maybe you're shifting to a new genre. Maybe you want to try writing something different. Maybe you're having to sort of redefine yourself as an author. Or maybe you're brand new and you have story ideas, but none of them are really pulling you in. None of them are giving you that spark of excitement. Step back and figure out what it is that sits that important on your heart, and how can you weave that into the story that you're telling. It's not preaching, it's threads of those things. And I think that helps us keep going when the writing's discouraging. That helps us be excited about an idea that we might not otherwise be, because we've found the part of it that speaks to us. And when a story speaks to you as a writer, there's just going to be more to it. There's going to be more depth. There's going to be more interest. Readers can sense when writers were bored with their own books, but I think they can also sense when we were excited about them. And that's one way to pull ourselves in on a deeper level.
Is there ever a temptation for you to go back and rework one of the earlier books that you've written, because now you're a different person as an author with 80 books, to go back to book 4 and go, I'm going to redo this whole book? Do you ever get that kind of temptation to go back, or are you happy with what's there?
I've found myself able to be happy with it. I know I'm a better writer than I was, but I feel like those early books stand pretty well on their own. If I were to go back and change them, I probably would end up, I don't want to say ruining them, but you kind of would, because that book came from who I was at that time. Right. The writing itself is good enough, I think, is such an important phrase for writers, because you could spend a lifetime making something better and never be done with it. And so I think we have to get to a point where we recognize this is good enough. I've done the best I can. This book can stand on its own. I know some writers, especially if you have indie published a book or gotten your rights back from a publisher, will go back and tighten things up. I think that's an absolutely legitimate thing to do. It isn't something I've been tempted to do at this point. But yeah, I can't remember who said it, but someone said, no book is ever finished, it's just abandoned. And I think I've had to take that approach to it, where you recognize I did the best I could on this, and now I have to move on and keep growing as a writer.
I see it in the lens of podcasting, because I help podcasters and stuff in a similar way. And one thing I say to new podcasters thinking about creating something new as a content creator is Theodore Roosevelt, do what you can with what you have where you are.
Yes.
And I think there's no way to get to book 80 without book number 1.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right? So you have to kind of go through the journey. And for podcasters, we got to record episode 1 before we can get to episode 80. Same kind of process, right?
Absolutely.
And to not look back at that and go, oh, I could have done that much better.
Yeah.
There's a reason why bands have their very first recording and first song and first album. And that took their lifetime to get to the first one. And then after that, you continue to write after, right? So I think this this feeling for authors that you should go back and fix the past and tweak it and make it better. I like your approach that it's you're happy with it, you're proud of it, and without it, you wouldn't be here.
Exactly. And I think our goal as writers is always to get better, but that means that what you did in the past has to not be as good as what you're doing now. It's part of growth. It doesn't mean you need to be ashamed of it. In fact, you should be able to look back and be proud. I did this. I did the best I could, as you said, at the time with what I had, and I've grown since then. So it's all as much a part of your journey. Book 1 is just as crucial to your journey as book 80. They are, and they're just as much you, but you've grown and you've improved. So I think we need to learn to be proud of ourselves in every point of the journey that we're making.
And celebrate.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
For new readers, they have their choice of numerous places to start with you. The question I had too was around one of your recent books around time travel. What about time travel has you curious? I love my wife loves Outlander for the time travel and all that, but the story of time travel, why is that so interesting to you as an author?
I think part of it is because I have always loved history. So in a non-physical way, I feel like I have visited other times and other places because I've delved so deeply into them. And so the idea of someone actually being able to travel out of their own time is a kind of a natural extension to that. But I also loved the idea of if someone could travel through time, how would that change time? Or can it? Are things set in stone and you can't change it, or can it be changed? That whole question of how does it even operate? And I feel like every author, every screenwriter, everyone who tries to tackle the concept of time travel approaches it differently. And so there are endless possibilities of deciding how it could happen and what impact it has and what would it mean to be out of your own time. And I wanted to tackle time travel in a way that someone was traveling from one historical era to another historical era. So as readers, they still feel like they're in, old times, but to them, they've traveled in the future 80 years and so much has changed that they feel like they're living in a futuristic dystopia. And to us, we think it's the 1870s. This is so old timey. How are you overwhelmed by this? But I love that idea of just demonstrating how much things changed over history, even though we look back and it all kind of blurs to us.
Yeah, I do like that you framed it in that time frame as well. Because again, we have Back to the Future and Marty and the DeLorean and all that. That just seems kind of more current day, and we can kind of see ourselves in the situation because we're familiar with the situation. But to take us back in time and then back in time again, that's quite unique. I like that perspective. Yeah. Amazing. So my podcast is Living the Next Chapter. So one of the questions I ask my guests when they come on the show is, how are you living your next chapter? Now, I'm afraid to ask you this question because it's going to lead to 10 more books just this week. But what's kind of coming up for you? What are you excited about? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, I do. As you said, have a lot of books in the lineup. I'm pretty well booked the next couple of years with books, but I also have, over the last few years, started screenwriting. I have a movie I wrote the screenplay for that is currently in post-production. It should be out by the end of this year. I have another screenplay I just heard yesterday is probably going to go into production toward the end of this year. So I've kind of shifted into this new area of writing. I'm back where I was in my early years as a novelist, where I know I'm learning. I have so much to learn, but it's exciting because it's a new way to tell stories and a new type of writing. And so, I've added that into the mix and working on that too.
Do you have any timeline at all for people that are curious about that? Is this something we're going to see in the next couple of years? Do you have any idea?
The one that's currently in post-production, we did all the filming for it at the beginning of 2025. I got to be there for it. We were over in the UK. That was really, really exciting. Nice. It is projected to release before the end of this year. I don't have a date on it yet, but it's, so they're just wrapping up post-production at this point. So that's coming up very soon, I hope. If the other one that is teetering on the edge of being picked up by a studio does, then it probably will film this year or next and be out in a year or two from then. So, lots of things just kind of lined up. We'll see where they go.
Okay, so your website will be our home to go find out more about that and all the books, right?
Yes,
Tell
absolutely.
us about your website as well.
It's sarahmeden.com. Pretty straightforward and easy. And find everything you need there, as well as links to my socials and my newsletter and all that.
Is it like fairies kind of going through your website? There's movement, and I love it. It's just like bubbles and things are moving. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I just thought it'd be kind of a nice little added interest to it.
While we're talking, I have it on my screen, and I'm just fixated.
It's a little mesmerizing, isn't it?
It is.
To watch the bubbles kind of float around.
It's like a little screensaver. I love it. It's beautiful.
Exactly.
Okay, well, Sarah, I'm so glad that you're here on the show. Let's leave off the audience with your thoughts again for the authors. Let's close off with them. One thing they can do this week to get into their writing, get into their chair and start their journey, continue writing. Maybe they walked away from it for a while and they're eager to come back. Just the motivation, the encouragement from you, being a prolific author and all the amazing stuff you got out there. Just your words of wisdom and encouragement for that author listening. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I would say find time to set aside even 5 or 10 minutes this week where you're going to write, and give yourself absolutely no pressure for it to be something that will be published, something that people will see, something that's perfect and wonderful, just to put words to paper, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's on a computer, laptop, your phone, pen and paper. And before you start, write down one thing that you're excited about in that writing session, even if it's just, I'm starting again after a break, even if it's just, I want to put down my thoughts about this thing that's important to me. When we frame our writing with something we are excited about or something that matters to us, and begin the journey without pressuring ourselves to be perfect, I think it brings the joy of writing into what we're doing. And it's that joy that will keep you going with it. It's the joy that starts us on that journey.
Okay, and that's the love letter to authors, love letter to readers. What's your message to a reader coming to you for the first time, or your community as a whole? What would you like to say to your readers who just can't wait for the next book?
I think as readers, we're often pressured to read books that we're told are the important books. We've all seen those, 100 books to read before you die, or check off this list of, great novels. How many have you read? I think as readers, it's important for us to recognize that what we're drawn to as readers is what makes a book important. That our list of books to read in our lifetime are the books we want to read. So when you're looking for something to read, find something that speaks to you and something that you're going to enjoy or lose yourself in, or that will give you what you're looking for in that moment. The beautiful thing about reading is there is no wrong way to do it. Find a book that you love, a book that speaks to you, and lose yourself in it. That is the joy of fiction. Well
said. Well written in real time with us. Thank you, Sarah. I love this. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being a great inspiration for authors as well. And readers, if you need, if you want like 80 of the top 100 books, you can get them all from one author. Like, that's a great thing. That's a great deal, right? If you keep 20 more books, you could be the whole 100 list yourself.
Maybe that's the new goal.
There you go, right? Let's do that. Let's go for that.
I love it.
Sarah, thank you so much for doing this. Everyone, all information for Sarah, the website, the links, go check out once these movies, they're going to happen. When the movies happen, you got to go check them out.
Yeah.
And when you buy Sarah's book, when you buy all 80 of Sarah's books, leave a review 80 times to let people know how much you love these books so that other people will also fall in love with Sarah as an author. It's very encouraging for our authors to hear from you as readers. Sarah, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Hey, as we exit the podcast, as we leave out the door, I know the car's running. Somebody's eagerly waiting for you to get out there and go home. As we exit the podcast, I just want to ask, if you have time, I would truly appreciate it. We ask for you to do this for our authors. When you buy your book, we ask you to leave a review. Why? Because it means a lot to the author and it tells other people that the book is great. Now, you don't hear me ask for this very often, so I'm going to do this here because we're friends, right? You and I are friends. I would love a review of this show because it'll tell more people to come and listen to this podcast. So if you have Apple, wherever you're listening, there's probably some way to give a star rating or leave a comment about the show. YouTube, you can always leave comments on YouTube. Every episode's there. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review, leave a rating, and share this with somebody. That's probably the best way to grow the podcast, is for you to share it. And by listening to the end of the episode, like you're doing right now, tells all the apps this is a good podcast. So thank you for already helping me by listening to this part. But go leave a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And thank you for being part of the podcast family. Take care.